Let's move on to our next slide about state modernization efforts. And so I'm happy to invite Raghavan Vardachari to the call. He is the director of the Division of State and Tribal Systems, and we appreciate coordinating with him to have Pennsylvania come to the call today to share some information about their system modernization. So Raghavan, I'll turn it over to you so that you can introduce our next topic and our speakers, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lynetta. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Raghavan Vardachari, and I'm Director for the Division of State and Tribal Systems. Systems modernization is a topic that is near and dear to everyone. Right now, my division oversees 35 plus state systems modernization projects. And so we invited representatives from the Pennsylvania Child Support System to share their experiences and lessons learned during their modernization journey. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the two presenters, Alex Kane, who is the Director, Division of Child Support Enforcement Systems, and Camilla Fox, Division of Child Support Enforcement Systems, Case Application Manager. Over to you, Alex. Take it from here.
Thank you. Let's start on slide 2, please. All right, so I'm just going to run through our agenda. We are going to do a little overview of our modernization project, discuss the goals, discuss where we are at now, what went well, some of the challenges and lessons learned that we had, and then we're going to look at some future projects and some of the OCSS applications we are looking to adopt in the future. Next slide. Thank you. So in Pennsylvania, we decided to do an incremental modernization where we would, over time, move off of our existing mainframe system to a new open systems platform. We'll see how we chop that up into different phases in a couple of slides. But for now, it's enough to know that we broke it up into phases, beginning with our initial launch in 2019 into 2020. For us, incremental modernization made sense because we had a mainframe system that we liked a lot. It really didn't have many serious problems. The core functionality worked just as we had hoped. And we really didn't see a huge need to move off of that model. A lot of the factors that were driving us off the mainframe were sort of external to the system itself, things like the cost to maintain it. In Pennsylvania's human services world, we shared costs for mainframe systems across several agencies, and several of those agencies had already elected to move to open systems, which meant that they were no longer sharing the costs to maintain the mainframe. So as more programs left, we started to have to pay for more of the bill, and that, we're relatively speaking, we're pretty small compared to the rest of the human services programs in Pennsylvania as far as our systems. So we were footing a large percentage of the bill for not as much need, I would say. So that was a main driver, cost. And then there's also just the fact that newer workers, especially as they were coming into the program, were having a hard time understanding the old mainframe programming, right? It's difficult if anybody's worked on a mainframe, you know that it's a lot of like remembering codes and screens and things like that. And it's not exactly the way we interface with IT systems in our personal lives. So new workers especially were having a hard time sort of acclimatizing to the mainframe. Moving to the open system is definitely helping with that. So that was a factor. We didn't have to do a feasibility study. That was important to us. We are probably not going to have to do a recertification, also important for us. Those are two great things. And while it wasn't cheaper to do the project this way in some sense, it did spread the cost out over several years. So each phase would have deliverables within each phase, and we would receive a bill for parts of those phases over time. So we could spread out our IT budget, stretch our incentive money and things like that over a longer period of time. And that really helped sort of blunt the costs. All those are good things. And I do want to say though that Camille and I are pretty neutral on whether this was the right path for us. This was like, I think as you'll see, this was sort of unambiguously a good thing for us. We did not have many issues bringing up our system. We, you know, we'll get into a little bit of the specifics, but it really didn't, we didn't run into many major issues along the way as we brought up our new system. And I think that, you know, is a big part of incremental modernization. But there was other things that, you know, as we look back, thinking about how we haven't been able to do much at all to our system in terms of enhancements over time, thinking about like how our stakeholders have been waiting for important updates really since 2018 that we've not been able to make for a variety of reasons. Like those were all factors in, you know, if we had to do it differently, we probably wouldn't, but we would at least consider those factors. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please, and turn it over to Camilla.
All right, thank you, Alex. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'll just review our goals quickly. I think Alex touched on a few of these, but one of our primary goals with the new system was to improve our worker efficiency and make the system easier to use and navigate, and to improve our training process for new workers. So just a little bit of background, our mainframe system, I believe, had almost like 300 screens, maybe a little bit more or less. And it was really an alphabet soup. You had to memorize, you didn't have to memorize all 300. You had your core set of screens, but you had to memorize the 4-digit acronym for that screen to be able to navigate there. On the mainframe screens, there's limited real estate on a screen for information. So that's probably what attributed to us having so many screens. So with the modernization project, we were able to combine and group information from multiple screens into one module within our new system. We allowed the workers to navigate where they needed to get to via links as much as possible. So it just really improved worker efficiency and navigation and training overall. And then, Alex already mentioned the reason why we wanted to move off the mainframe platform was due to the aging technology and the cost to maintain it. So on this slide, this is a snapshot overview of our current status of our technology refresh project, and it shows you how we broke this out into multiple phases. We did begin this well before 2019, but that's when we piloted our first phase. And in our first phase, which I think was our biggest phase that we did, we had our case initiation, locate, case management, and intergovernmental subsystems brought over into the new system. We piloted that, like I said, September 2019, and our final statewide rollout for that phase was March 2020, right before we were all sent home for COVID restrictions. And then after that, we had two smaller phases, one again in March, which was just a guideline calculation update. And then we had another smaller phase implemented in 2021, which was our establishment and enforcement subsystems. So that brings us to our most recent phase that we implemented, which was phase 2.1. And the bulk of that phase was our financial subsystem. So that's kind of like, in my opinion, the beating heart of our system. The financials is so important. We knew we had to get this one right, so that's why it was the main focus of a phase. And we implemented this phase in April of this year was our final rollout. So we also did a pilot for this one and then had subsequent statewide rollout. And then what remains left in our tech refresh project is basically all of the back-end processing. So our batch solution, our batch scheduling, reporting, all of that, that's still running from our mainframe. So we need to take that and bring that over into the open systems side. All right. So what went well? Actually, a lot went well. I think Alex also kind of hinted at that. But some of the things that we did well that we are really proud of include county participation. So we ensured that our county users were involved every step of the way. We have a county advisory committee, and we utilized them to come up with county work group members that joined us for each phase. And they were a part of the process from business requirements all the way through to user acceptance testing. We wanted to really make sure, as Alex said, we didn't change any business processes. So we really wanted to make sure that we were, getting those business processes correct. And ensuring that they had some ownership in how the system looked and worked, essentially how you navigated, how stuff was arranged in there, because they're the ones using it. So we're really proud of how that went. My next point on what went well, I have it listed here as change is hard. It was kind of my mantra in the back of my head throughout this whole project, because it's just human nature to resist change. But I think what really works well with incremental modernization is it allows for a gradual adoption of the new system. We were able to bring a piece over and people were able to get used to it while still having a foot in the old system, where they're comfortable. And we didn't throw it all at them at once. So it was nice to have that gradual adoption of it. The other thing I think worked in our favor was, while, there were some hindrances to it, I think it did help us, is the no business process changes. By making no changes to our business processes, it really ensured that our largest learning curve was essentially the new navigation of the system. So we did do on-site support for that first phase, and there was a lot of preparation for that. We had pilot counties participate in user acceptance testing, and that was just a little way for us to get them early access to the system, help us find bugs during testing, but also just to get used to using it. But we did have a training environment, so all of our county participants were eventually able to access the new system in the training environment. We had webinars where we did live demos and answered questions of all of the various aspects of the system. We had train the trainer sessions of over a couple of days, where we brought all of the people that were going to be out on site in the field in together to train everybody, to make sure everybody's on the same page and learn how our communication was going to go with, reporting bugs and issues. One of the biggest, most important pieces of documentation that we had created was a crosswalk. So essentially we said, okay, in the new system, you went to CMEM, well, where do you go? And then, or in the old system, you went to CMEM, where do you go in the new system? So they could type in CMEM and it would pull up how they access that information in the new system and where to go. So there's a lot of preparation for on-site support. And I think that worked out in our favor.
Mila, this is Jay. We had a few questions. Is this a good time to pause quickly and
Sure.
Mark Dornbos asked, will the Pennsylvania back-end software have to be rewritten, or will the same software just run on another platform that's server-based?
I am not the technical person, but I believe it's rewritten.
I agree. I believe it is being rewritten.
Okay. And then Melissa Hiltz says, Tech Refresh has been a really good upgrade over the mainframe. So I think that might be someone.
Yep. Thank you, Melissa. We agree.
Thanks, Melissa, for that comment. And I think that was all on this topic. So I'll let you go back to it. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. So we had all that preparation for on-site support. I do want to talk, we also did have pilot phases for phase 1 and 2.1. Those are larger phases. So for phase 1, we actually had 2 pilots. We had 4 smaller counties be pilot 1. They had the system for 2 months, and we basically told them, you guys are the ones that are going to be finding all of the bugs. This is going to be the most frustrating phase, the pilot phase, because if there's any bugs, you're going to be finding them. And we really relied on them for that purpose. So we were in the pilot counties for a week. We had, daily calls and daily check-ins. And we just tried to identify as many bugs as possible to get those fixed. And then our second pilot was Philadelphia, which is our largest county. And we always joke that if it works for Philadelphia, it's probably going to work for everybody else. So they were our second pilot. They had it. We were on site there for a week as well. And, identified any additional bugs, got those fixed before we started rolling it out. We actually separated our state, the remaining counties into 5 groups, and we rolled out 5 groups for the rest of the rollout. And we were on site in the remaining counties anywhere between 2 and 3 days. We were not there for a whole entire week in the groups 1 through 5 rollouts because we did, like I said up front, identify a lot of those bugs, get them fixed before we rolled it out. And again, it was the biggest hurdle once we got to the past pilot was navigation. And people were able to pick it up really quickly. I mean, I think we found ourselves sometimes just twiddling our thumbs waiting for a question because the system was working well and we had a lot of good documentation for how to use the system and how to find the information in the system. So once they got over that initial, where do I click? How do I navigate? Things went really smoothly.
Camilla, before we continue, we had an additional question. John Pace wanted to know how long was the planning, coding, testing, user acceptance, and training in the works prior to 2019? And then federal certification review for the system. So I'm thinking that means, is there upcoming federal certification review for the new system?
All right, let me see here. I know when I have the kickoff was, oh my goodness.
And Deborah, can you advance to the next slide, please?
Deborah's lost sound. She's mentioned to us, Lynetta. I don't.
Okay, Vincent, could you ensure that Deborah still has her host capability and can advance the slides and speak?
While Camilla's looking up the information on UAT and the pre-activities before implementation in 2019, I can address the certification piece. We are doing an incremental renewal, so because of that, we have not been asked to do a recertification at this point.
Thank you. And Tevlin Thompson with our Division of State and Tribal Systems has her hand up. So I'm going to allow Tevlin, you can unmute your line now if you would like to speak.
I'm thinking maybe Tevlin.
That was by mistake. I
Oh,
hit the button
accidentally?
by mistake. Yeah, accident. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Thanks, Tevlin.
You're welcome.
And I know that Deborah seems to be having some issues with being able to advance the slides, and wondering if I can be a co-host, I can share the screens. Vincent.
Yeah, you're a co-host, Lynetta.
Thank you.
Let me see, Deborah. Deborah is a co-host as well.
Lynette,
Okay, can you guys see my screen?
I can see it, someone's screen,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so I will share my screen and we can move right along. Sorry about that, everybody.
No worries. So to the question is when did this start prior to implementing the first phase? We started in July of 2017. So it was a little over 2 years before we implemented our first phase.
And I did have a couple more questions if we could. Bettina McCracken said has a few questions. Is the system still an overnight batch system?
So that's an interesting question. We do run batches overnight. So something I didn't really cover in my first slide was that we are still running two systems, and the mainframe system is still the system of record. So there is a active link between the open system and mainframe that does exchange data in near real time. And there's also an overnight batch that runs to the mainframe.
Okay, and what kind of automation was able to be built in to the incremental modernization? What kind of intuitive functions are now available? And if you can share which vendor was used?
So our vendor is Deloitte. Our IT vendor is selected through a process that's not necessarily fully controlled by us. So they are our system vendor for human services generally in Pennsylvania. Can you repeat the first part of the question?
Was any kind of automation able to be built into the incremental modernization?
So I wouldn't say we would build any automation because we didn't really change anything in terms of functionality. We certainly did make, I would say, navigation and flow better than what you had in the mainframe. It's much more intuitive to use or to move from screen to screen in the open system than it would be in the mainframe.
Okay, and then so a question, so there are no user enhancement or changes in how the page may appear to users? Are all the shortcuts the same? I don't believe that was the case. Is that?
You're
No.
correct. It's not, we have changed so the navigation is really what's changed. The front end look and feel of the system is totally different. It looks much more like a typical modern application than an old mainframe system now. And there's no longer do you have to like type in a screen name or a code to get from slide to slide. Now you just there's a right hand or a left hand navigation that you can sort of find certain things, or you can do searches, and it's a lot easier to move through the system.
Okay, a couple more questions. How long did Pennsylvania allow after the pilots to complete bug fixes before moving to a statewide rollout?
No, you go ahead, Kamala.
All right, our first pilot was 2 months with the 4 smaller counties. And then we brought on Philadelphia for another 2 months. And then we started our statewide group rollouts where we rolled out anywhere between, like I'd say 10 to 15 counties at a time in 5 groups.
And was the programming language changed? I'm assuming the answer to that is going to be yes. For
Yes.
example, the mainframe was COBOL and open system is now C. Was a code converter used?
I don't believe so, but I think we're veering into questions that Camille and I really can't answer.
I was thinking that too. So I have a few more questions that are listed. Lynetta, I'm going to ask you, should we just retain these questions and then do a follow-up
Yeah.
and allow Pennsylvania to research the answers?
Definitely, yes, yes,
Jay, this is Raghavan here. Can I jump in and answer a few questions here?
sure.
Sure.
Yeah, so what programming language was used? That's called as a C# with a .NET architecture. So that's a Microsoft framework, C# and .NET. Was a code converter used? Typically when, there is a conversion from the mainframe to a modern system, there is a code converter that is being used. I don't know what Pennsylvania used, but probably if they had Deloitte do the code conversion, they might have used a company called Innovake that did the code conversion. So that might be a proprietary code converter that they might have used to convert from a mainframe to a modern web-based system.
Thank you, Raghavan. I think this general question might be of interest to people on the call, though. Shannon Hill wanted to know, when will you discontinue use of the old mainframe system entirely and work only in the new system?
So we are currently there as of April of this year. So all of our front end facing user functionality is in the new system, and all of our workers are working in the new system.
Thanks,
Then
Camille.
I had a couple of follow-ups too on questions that we had. So on that one, the mainframe will be fully decommissioned. At this point, we're looking at January of 2026. So that will be, at that point, we'll be running completely on open system. And I also wanted to go back to the question about like UAT and length, because we had an interesting situation when we brought up phase 2.1, the financials. So understandably, we were very concerned about like having any issues with financials, and while we didn't have anything that made us like, concerned that the system wasn't going to work or that we were going to have massive problems on launch, we had enough bugs during UAT for financials that we extended UAT testing for an additional 2 months. So I think that's a takeaway that we would make for this group. When you're doing your financials, look at your time frame for SAT and UAT and consider adding additional time because you'll probably need it.
Thank you, guys. I think we can move on, and for those questions that came through the chat that we didn't quite get to, we can make sure that Alex will receive them, and Camilla, we will also provide their contact information if you would like to reach out to them directly. So we're going to kind of move on.
So
and then-
Lenetta, I do have one more update because there's one question that was not answered before.
Okay.
The question was, will there be a change to the database, the backend? So and the answer is yes, and Pennsylvania is using Oracle for their backend. Because when you convert a system from a mainframe to a modern system, the modern system will not communicate back to the database or the mainframe. So it has to be a modern database, which we call it as the relational database management system, and they are using Oracle for the backend.
Thanks, Raghav.
Not a problem.
And I appreciate that, there are a lot of questions about this topic, and, and we definitely want to give the panelists an opportunity to respond. And Raghavan, as you see fit, we ask that you, will step in if you see a question that could be addressed with the group. But at this point, we're going to move on to the next slide and continue to pause throughout so that we could field any questions that come up.
Can I just wrap up this slide here?
Yes.
I just wanted to say, we were finishing up the on-site support discussion. One of the things that went really well was our on-site support, and I feel that having that on-site support set us up to be able to do remote support for the subsequent phases. So, I mean, we were obviously contending with the COVID restrictions. However, because we had such a good on-site support presence and were able to ensure everybody was comfortable with the new system, when we implemented new screens and new subsystems into it, that again, going back, the largest learning curve was the new navigation. It was easier for our counties to pick up on how to navigate those new modules that we added when we brought them over. So we were able to do remote support for all of our subsequent phases. And, we still had our check-in calls and, communications with the counties as we went through it, but we were able to do it remotely. And I'll turn it back over to Alex.
Yes, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the challenges. So I think one of the biggest challenges is that if you do what we did, you're going to have a long period where you're not really enhancing the system outside of the navigation, the look and feel, and things like that. So since around 2018, our IT runway, our ideas for system improvements and things like that has really been stagnant. We haven't moved on anything. Any of the changes that we made during this time, during the time we were bringing up the new system until now, they've basically been mandated changes. So we've done guideline updates because we've been required to, or if there's a federal forms change, we'll make those changes. But not much else has changed in that time frame, and that's largely because, one, we're spending all of our money on the system the system modernization, and we didn't really have the funding available for additional projects. And two, any changes that we would make to core functionality along that time frame, we would have to make it in both systems. So it didn't make a whole lot of sense to us to pay for an upgrade in a system that's going to be decommissioned in the near future. And that's challenging to get across to your stakeholders. Even though we've kind of explained it a lot, over time, the frustration of not seeing changes, not seeing the new things that they're hearing about other states implement, it builds up, and you kind of have to talk that out with your group. But it's definitely something to think about. Additionally, like I mentioned earlier, you really want to think about like how much time you're allotting for testing, especially testing the financials. That was a lesson that we learned. We're carrying that over into our final phase. We've looked at extending the time frame for testing of the revised batch processes and things like that. And then, kind of as I mentioned before, throughout the whole process, you got to keep the stakeholders updated on where you are and when you'll be able to implement new functionality and things like that. Next slide, please. So mentioned our runway hasn't really changed. Right now, we have about 20 initiatives on our IT runway, and that doesn't count many ideas that we've had that we just felt it wasn't even worth getting an estimate on because we have so much work to do already. But here are 3 things that we are prioritizing for, right after we bring up the new system in 2026 for good. The first is electronic documents. We really would like to be able to have clients submit and also receive documents through our child support website. We know that a few of our counties have started doing a lot of electronic document exchange with clients independent of us, especially sort of kickstarted by COVID, and it's working out really well for them. So we'd like to get that into a more, a more controlled environment, enhance security around that, and to make the sort of interface between us and our clients a little bit more easy to use. Alongside of that will be a website redesign. Our website really hasn't been, the look and feel of it really hasn't been updated since probably late 2000s, early 2010s. So we're looking at 15 years old now on our website. It's ready for an update, and it makes sense to kind of do that alongside of the electronic documents enhancement, since it's going to be a big portion of the website. And then we also want to do two-way texting. Some of our counties are using third-party applications to send and receive texts from their clients. It works out really well for them. Clients will never answer their phone, but they will definitely, well, I wouldn't say definitely, but they are much more likely to answer a text than they are a phone call. So we've had some counties kind of testing that out on their own, and we've seen that it works. And now we would like to integrate it into our system so that we have record of those texts.
All right. So OCSS applications. In Pennsylvania, we have batch programs in place for many of the OCSS applications like FCR, ND&H, Federal Collections and Enforcement, Locate, Fast Levy. So all of that is automated in our system. We send requests, receive responses through batch. Our system processes that information, automatically uploads the information when required, based on our rules. And we identify the source of the information when it is loaded into the system, so the workers do know the source of the information. So all of that is automated. We do use the ancillary applications that are provided through the child support portal. Most recently, we joined Electronic Document Exchange and Communication Center. And some of the future applications that we're considering are the eNIMSIN and iForms. They're on our radar, just no immediate plans for them just yet.
Great. Thank you guys so much. And you did generate a lot of questions. Jay, I would like to turn it over to you to see if there are any other questions that we may want to share with the panelists.
Sure. Let's see. I think one of the questions was, how did you make sure the business and functional flow is not changed when the code is rewritten in a new language? Did you extract the business and functional flow from existing code? And these may be some questions, Camilla, that you know, need to be
Yeah, I
answered.
mean,
Need to answer that.
I mean, I know we had business flow, documentation, whenever we're going through the work order. And of course, whenever we're doing testing, that's also making sure that the business functionality didn't change. But how it was extracted from the existing code, I cannot speak to that.
So, Lynetta, I'm thinking that we may just stick with what we said earlier. I did
Okay.
put this in chat, but I'll let everyone know that we'll work with Alex and Camilla and allow them to work with their team to answer some of the more technical questions. Maybe we'll also engage Vagabond and DSTS.
Yes, I
And
agree.
provide that information. Do you think we could provide those questions and answers in a follow-up e-flash? I know we've done that in the past.
Yeah, we'll figure out how we will do that, Jay,
Okay.
after the call, but we will definitely make sure that, we address those questions that came up that we didn't answer. So at this time, I just wanted to also highlight that this is Alex and Camilla's contact information. I feel free to email them if you have any specific questions. I hope they're okay with that, given the number of questions that came up today. But I'm sure that you're willing to answer questions, because the purpose of this topic is to, share this information with states so that, they could learn from your experience, and I'm sure you'll be available to explain it. So
Well,
we'll
we have one raised hand. So
Okay.
we have time to let Troy, if he,
Yeah.
I've opened the line, Troy. So if you'll unmute yourself, you're welcome to go ahead and ask your question.
Can you hear me?
We
We can
can.
hear you.
I'm not sure how my hand got raised. I apologize.
Oh, no problem. No problem.
Yeah.
Good to talk.
Thank you, though.
We'll let you back off the line.
All right. And again, I want to thank Alex and Camilla for sharing that information. That was very helpful. It generated a lot of discussion, and we really believe that it would. And so again, thank you again. Thank you, DSTS, for your participation on the call. I want to kind of highlight real quickly the upcoming call dates, as you guys can see here. And then our next call is September 18th, and we will cover the DFS portal refresher. And as we mentioned in our release update, we will provide a portal 2.0 overview. And we are tentatively going to share some information about accessing OCSS reports. And then in November, we'll talk about new and existing locate sources, as well as getting an update from the employer services team on employer outreach and best practices. And lastly, here is our contact information. If you have any questions about the child support portal, or if you have a question for the Division of State and Tribal Systems, their email address is here, employer services, as well as anything about Portal 2.0 enhancements. And again, if you receive the SSR reports and would like to participate on the upcoming call, or if you want to add a topic to our discussion with federal agencies, please be reminded to reach out to us at OCSS Fed Systems. Any additional questions, or if you have some suggestions about upcoming calls, please, we would love to hear from you. We thank you so much for participating. We apologize for those difficulties during the beginning of the call, but we hope to see you guys in September.
If I could just share that in case Alex and Camilla have not seen the chat, we've been getting dozens of heartfelt thanks for your presentation. Everyone really appreciated the information and wanted to give you and your team kudos for all the work that you've done. So thank you so much on behalf of the participants in the call.
Yes, thank you. Thank you again, Alex and
Thank you for
Camilla.
having us. We appreciate
Awesome.
it.
Awesome.
Agreed.
And
Happy to
if-
help.
And if there are others, well, I'm going to hold that for later. But thank you again, everybody, for your participation today, and have a great afternoon, and we'll see you in September.
Thanks, Lynetta. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Yay. Thank you, everybody. We got through it, even though
We
we had a
did.
few
Thanks for
technical
taking over the
issues.
slides. I
Yeah,
have
thank
no
you so
idea what
much.
happened. I just all of a
Yeah.
sudden my sound cut out. It's crazy.
We're here to support each other, so glad we were able to fill in. Thanks again, everybody, and thanks, Vincent, for your help.
Thank you for your patience too.
All righty.
Appreciate you troubleshooting for us. Thanks so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.